welcome to Scott's podcast series. I am delighted to have the CEO of Ticket Manager, Tony Knopp, on today's podcast. Tony, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And why don't you give me a brief introduction of yourself before we dive into the questions?
Yeah, so I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ticket Manager. We work with major brands around the world to help them manage and track their sports tickets, get the biggest ROI they can out of them. So best way to think about it is getting those tickets out of drawers and getting them used for brands like Wells Fargo, CDW, Nissan, Adidas, Anheuser-Busch, Miller Coors, you name them. We've got a lot of them.
That's awesome. And we'll definitely dive into that. And one thing that stuck to me, Tony, is you mentioned, I think in one of your three things a while back, I think almost a year ago, that really stuck with me, which I've mentioned on Scott's Take several times, is that defining tickets, which is an asset control with scale that expires with incredibly complicated and extremely high stakes. And we're now heading into the fall of 2021. The COVID Delta variant is skyrocketing cases. Where do you see how this will affect overall ticket sales heading into Q4 and Q1 of 2022?
Man, that's a big question. There's a lot of thoughts on how Delta and COVID and the increased saving rates are going to change what's happening with ticketing. I think you're correct when we say that, ticketing is the technology at this point. It's access control at scale. There's a lot of different variables that go into it, especially the fact that tickets are more easily transferred than they've ever been. So it's become a technology job. I think, how ticketing is going to be impacted over the next 6 months. There are a lot of events out there. We know that. There's a lot of savings. Vivid Seats has been predicating their SPAC on the fact that the savings rate went from 2.7 trillion to 4.6. So they believe that that money is going to get spent. But there's also this belief that there's going to be too many tickets that are out there. And, it was a pretty saturated market in the first place when you're looking at things that you can do on a weekend when it comes to a live event. So I think that, this is just my opinion. People are making a bet that there's going to be this big snapback return. I don't believe that's going to be the case. It's usually, with situations like this, which are really complicated, there's usually not an extreme on one side or the other. I think the winners are going to win. I think that the large events are going to come back and they're going to be strong. But I think all of the middle events and all of the events that, were maybe not must-sees are really going to struggle over the next year. And I think we're seeing that across the board already, right? The big,
Right.
The landmark events are doing well and the rest are struggling to find buyers.
Definitely great answers. There's so many unknowns in the ticketing world, especially with the Delta variant skyrocketing cases. And getting back to Ticket Manager and really an interesting concept. And I have to admit, I was a doubter when you started the company.
And you were.
I was, and I didn't think that companies needed companies like Ticket Manager to manage tickets. I thought they can just do it themselves. So I was completely wrong. Explain your growing pains and how you became a major success with Ticket Manager.
I'll keep it as brief as I can. We really, it's funny. We started the business in very late 2007. We say 2007, but it was October of 2007 at that point. The year was already basically spoken for. And, starting a business is difficult and lonely and hard. And, I wouldn't wish it on my enemies, to be totally honest. The one thing that we really stuck to was we just couldn't believe that this is the way things were going to be done going forward. It was, no matter how hard it was, no matter how many times we thought we should possibly, call it a day because we weren't getting the traction we wanted and the timeline we wanted. We just kind of looked at it and said, but this has to change. Like, we just can't be in a situation where companies are only using 30% of, a $50 million investment. That just can't continue. Somebody's eventually going to solve this problem. And about 2 years in, one of my co-founders handed me an article that Malcolm Gladwell wrote called The Sure Thing, which I've referenced a million times. And in The Sure Thing, he tells a number of stories about Ted Turner and a number of other successes, Michael Burry from The Big Short and the like. And, he paints a picture, as Gladwell does, paints a picture of, here's a thesis, and I'm going to take it apart over the rest of the article, that entrepreneurs are cowboys, that they're risk takers, that they're contrarians to the end. But really what most successful entrepreneurs are people who just see something and say, this has to eventually go this way. And they believe in it enough that they override some of their logic. And that was us. We just believed that eventually this has to get solved. And we saw a couple of different ways it could get solved. And we just saw a way for us to try to create a business. And so what we did was really look at it and say, if it's going to get solved, then this is going to be a land race. It's going to be a land grab. What do we need to do to put ourselves in a position where we're protected, where we can grow, and where once the bigger players see that maybe we're not crazy, they can't just come and take our lunch. I think
For sure.
that's what most of our success has been predicated upon, just this belief that this is going to work and somebody's going to do it. So why not us?
That's amazing. Amazing success story. I mean, what you guys have become today, and something that I'm most impressed with, especially being a secondary guy myself, working for DTI, working for Ventilex, spending a lot of time on the secondary side, is that you guys recently created the all access community, a B2B marketplace for your clients to buy and sell tickets across the Fortune 500 companies that list with you. How is that going, and how is that going to evolve in the next several months?
Um, so I'll answer both. It's going very well. It's going better than we had anticipated, to be totally honest. I think there's a little bit of optimal timing for it as well, because there's a lot of businesses out there who are getting tickets that can't use them right now. They're not allowed to send guests. And I think we've seen, and we've all worked with teams and leagues, that they're not going to shut down again. We've talked to some major ones, I'm not going to out them, who have said, there's a very low chance that we ever shut down again in the next couple of years. Otherwise, we're going to be insolvent. And the government knows it, and we know it, and it's got to continue. And so they're shipping those tickets out, whether companies like it or not. And sometimes they can't use them, which has created this supply. When you get into our market, as you know, you're either supply driven or demand driven, one or the other, right? And now we're kind of both, which has been fantastic. So we're seeing it work very well. It's giving companies an ability to triage and lifeguard some tickets that were going in the trash can. Our intent is not for companies to resell tickets. That's not their intent either, but it is part of the formula going forward so that they can get from that 75% use rate up in the 90s. How do I think it's going to play out going forward? I think, the people in the secondary are generally pretty short-sighted. That doesn't mean there's a lot of innovators who aren't, but there are many who are. They're arbitrage-based. And I think they're going to see that this is going well and try to get into the market. And we're aware of that, and we know the different ways in. I think it's just, it's difficult to do that because, look, we offer a service that this is a piece of that service. It's not what we're trying to do. So, we're already starting to see it play out, in the marketplace, where people are trying to do what has worked in secondary, which is, try to commoditize the market. I'll offer you lower fees. I'll buy it up front. I'll do all the things that work in general short-term arbitrage. But that doesn't really work in the corporate and enterprise market because that's not how their budgets work. So that's how we see it going over the next year or two. It's just becoming one of those waves where, it's now the norm. There's enough major companies doing it that are big names, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Latham & Watkins, Deloitte does it, Anheuser-Busch does it, Dell does it. I name those in particular because they're law firms, they're consulting firms, they're accounting firms. They're the ones who would be last to this. And they're doing it, and now the teams are starting to encourage it. So this is just the new world order, right? That there's no, you and I agree that there's no real such thing as secondary and primary. And there really hasn't been.
Exactly. And no, I mean, great point. I think it's a fabulous tool for your clients to utilize, and definitely cutting edge technology. So we'll definitely wish Ticket Manager the best of luck with that. And really, last question, loaded question too. Where do you see ticketing 5 years from now in 2026?
So I guess I'll set the stage, and then a lot of times, one of the things I try to do in these things is actually answer the question. There's a lot of people who don't, because they've got a total company line. I always said when I was in the crowd in my 20s that I wasn't going to be that guy. I was going to answer the question, right or wrong, and you can make fun of me in 5 years when I'm totally wrong. So here goes what I think is going to happen. I think that the major players in this space know that they're playing defense and they're doing it very well. I think that the economics of their deals are positive for them. And I think that the North American market is very, very friendly to them. I think what's happening in Europe is terrifying to a number of primary ticketers, because there's a lot of government involvement and a lot of people getting involved that are making it difficult for them to expand their reach into secondary, or kind of making them honest as to why they're doing the digital ticketing that they're doing. I mean, everybody knows that they're out there saying they're doing it for convenience, or they're doing it for the fan. And you and I know that's not the case. They're doing it because they want to sell merchandise, they want to sell more tickets, they want to sell more beer, right? And that's fine. That's it's the Google and Apple model. I understand. We want to give you a really great phone, and what it's really going to do is be a marketing tool for us to sell you a bunch of crap, and they build $1 trillion businesses based on it. So here's what I think is going to happen in ticketing. I think the teams are going to get more control. I think it's going to become more granular. I think the idea that you used to contract with a primary or a secondary to take this very large chunk of your business and kind of outsource it, I actually think that that's going to become a little bit more insourced. I do think they're going to outsource a lot of things, right? We see the national sales teams that are being outsourced. We see hospitality being outsourced and the like. But I do think they want to have more control of their data. I think that's getting easier to do. And so there's a lot of opportunity for disruption in the marketplace. I just don't understand, and I'll say this honestly, why so many people are trying to go disrupt something that's so commoditized.
Right.
They're trying to dive into the primary side. I mean, there's so many other opportunities to make money right now. Worry about the primary side later. That's a highly commoditized market where you don't make a whole lot.
Really good answer. We're going to play that footage back in 2026 to see if
we'll see.
Well, Tony, thank you so much for joining Scott's Takes podcast series. We're going to send you out a Keep It Lean and Clean t-shirt. You know, that's my motto over the spring and summer. And have a fantastic day. Definitely I'll definitely give a plug for Tony. Follow him on Twitter. And definitely check out the All Access community if you are a large business looking to have a ticket person to really manage your tickets. Ticket Manager does a fabulous job. Thank you again, Tony. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks.